Let's go now to Portland, Oregon, where a terrifying and astounding situation is unfolding on the city's streets. Video has emerged showing camouflaged authorities forcefully arresting peaceful protesters, deploying tear gas and rubber bullets, and federal law enforcement using unmarked vehicles to grab protesters off of Portland streets. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi calling the officers unidentified stormtroopers, saying their kidnappings are not the action of a democratic republic. The Oregon Attorney General, as well as Democratic members of Oregon's congressional delegation, have requested an investigation into the situation. The Oregon Department of Justice, along with the American Civil Liberties Union, are suing several federal agencies for civil rights abuses. Both the governor of Oregon and Portland's mayor criticizing President Trump, calling the actions of authorities an extraordinary abuse of power.
Mr. President, federal agencies should never be used as your own personal army. Let's be clear, this is not political theater. This is far more dangerous than that.
And new tonight, a leaked memo from the Department of Homeland Security to the New York Times it's been revealed that federal officers deployed in Portland didn't even have proper training. The memo reads, moving forward, if this type of response is going to be the norm, specialized training and standardized equipment should be deployed to responding agencies. Joining me now is Kelly Simon, interim legal director with the ACLU of Oregon. Kelly, I want to illustrate this because it's been a busy news cycle and things get lost. I think people need to understand that the things I just said, talking about forces and authorities, the reason we're using vague terms is because these are unidentified federal officers of some sort. They're not wearing insignia. They're not wearing badges. They are not moving around in vehicles that have their office on their cars. This is the kind of thing you see in dictatorships, in countries that don't have a rule of law.
That's exactly right. What we are seeing is an unconstitutional nightmare, and we are responding with the full firepower of the ACLU. But putting the legalities of this lawlessness aside for just a moment, what we are also seeing is terrifying. People should not be afraid of being taken by unmarked federal officers in unmarked vehicles for absolutely no reason on any street in America. These tactics, anonymous policing, disappearing people through violence or snatch and grab tactics, these shows of force, these are all tactics that we've seen historically used to intimidate and control and devalue the lives of Black and brown and indigenous communities. And now they're being used with increasing frequency and reckless abandon by those charged with keeping us all safe. In the name of national security, the Trump administration is terrorizing people in America, and it should concern us all.
I mean, we're looking at pictures of secret police. They're getting into an unmarked vehicle. They've got something on their shirt that says police, but they're not police. They're something else. They're some kind of federal officers. We have acknowledgement from the DHS that they're doing it, and in fact, the DHS has said that this is something they're going to emulate all over the country. They were not invited in by the governor. They were not invited in by the mayor. They are not coordinating with local police. And I would say this for the ACLU. It's harder than it typically is because normally you know who you're suing about what. You've got the identifying features of the police who you might be suing. This is like being in a different place. You even have to do extra work just to figure out who are you going after and why.
That's exactly right. This behavior has no place in a free society. We're seeing crowds of people lawfully exercising their First Amendment rights to demand an end to police brutality and racist policing, being met with clouds of tear gas and other chemical weapons. We're seeing those same people shot in the head, causing skull fractures, shot in the back, causing large and painful contusions. Gas masks are being lifted to spray pepper spray underneath them, and batons and butts of guns are being used to bludgeon people. It's simply awful, and you're right. People sometimes don't know which law enforcement agency is the one committing those acts. And while this nation's attention is currently on the federal government in Portland, police throughout the country have been shamefully engaged in a concerted attack on the right to dissent, meeting calls to end police brutality with more police brutality. The federal government is now just adding escalation on top of escalation, and the ACLU won't stand for it.
Well, Donald Trump has called governors who face unrest in their cities weak and fools. He says you have to dominate. If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. They're going to run over you. You're going to look like a bunch of jerks. And this is just the latest in a string of things that the president has talked about in terms of law enforcement, and members of his administration have talked. So earlier we talked about immigration. It's all the same concept. And I guess I'm curious from a legal perspective what you're fighting in that case. Because if it is a tone, if it is a tacit set of directions, how do you fight against that? In some cases, it's not. In some cases, it is a police breaking rules, but in some cases, as we've learned, the rules don't exist. The things that the police are doing in many cases in this country are not actually illegal.
I think the Trump administration and law enforcement throughout this country would like to think that rules don't exist. But we have a constitution in this country. And the ACLU has responded with several lawsuits nationwide, including one in Oregon seeking to prohibit the dispersal and use of force against journalists and legal observers. And we've now added the federal agencies to that suit. We've seen one of our clients shot in the back by federal agencies. And we will continue to defend the rights of protesters in Oregon and beyond against the onslaught of attacks that we are seeing. We plan to see the Trump administration in court more than once in the very near future. And there is clear lawlessness happening in our streets right now.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand, because the CL in ACLU is civil liberties, and you're talking about journalists and you're talking about protesters. It's hard to come back from that. Once you go down the road of silencing both dissent and protest and silencing those of us who bear witness to these things, you've sort of won the whole ballgame.
The Trump administration, yes, has stated that they intend to take this posture nationwide, this blatant unconstitutional behavior nationwide, but the ACLU is here to stop them in their tracks. We will not rest until this lawlessness ends.
My colleague Cal Perry tweeted a little while ago, "I've never seen a country make it back from secret police and political prisoners. That's usually the point of no return." Let's hope he's wrong, and let's hope you're able to succeed in this. Kelly Simon, thank you for being with us. Kelly is the interim director of the ACLU of Oregon. Stay with this story. It's a very big deal. It's been nearly 2 years